Good morning, everyone. We are currently just making sure everyone can get in through the lobby. We'll be starting in a little bit before 10:05, but we'll give you an update if needed. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and just to answer that question real quick. We're going to send out a copy of this once we are done to let everyone know, and it'll also be posted online. You should be able to control on the slides what you're looking at past our own presentation, though. But of course, we'll be able to send it. Just allowing a few more minutes for the rest of the people to click on the link. We're not at our current registration total and just want to give everyone a chance. So just a few more minutes. Just want to give everyone a heads up there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. And of course, we'll go over some housekeeping really quickly for folks. Those who are inviting others or um, are waiting for people to come on in, we'll go and touch on housekeeping for questions that people may have missed. So first and foremost, want to thank everybody for attending our kickoff for the 24-25 funding round application. The application will be open at the end of this presentation. We'll be providing not only a link to the website for the portal and this chat, we'll also be sending out an email to all the registrants and as well as our general listserv by midday with everything there. But as I said, if you already have the link and you're already on the SB740 website, once the presentation is over, please do feel free to go to the application. We'll be working all day for technical assistance, so we'll be able to assist with any issues, hopefully none, that you may run into, of course. My name is Ryan Story. I am the program manager for SB740. This is my second year as the program manager. Been with the authority since 2016 and on and off with the SB740 program since 2020. The people speaking today will be myself, Elizabeth Mendez, who is our program lead, Daniel Madrid, Kim Nguyen, and Colin Smith, who are all program analysts. Linda Doan is not in the office right now, but she is also our other costs program lead as well as a general program analyst. Wanted to give her a shout out there. Okay, just want to go over some housekeeping on the next slide to just kind of cover what we'll be doing in this webinar. I know this program's got a lot of moving parts to it, and there's a lot of repeat applicants every year, so questions sometimes blend over themselves. Okay, so from the housekeeping, just want to consider all this. You shouldn't have the ability to turn on your microphones or cameras, but just in case, please do mute yourself and turn off cameras. Not only does it distract from the actual presentation itself, I don't know if there might be any bandwidth issues with other folks that might be, you know, in a more limited space. So we want to make sure that this presentation doesn't run any type of technical hitches that might be related to bandwidth. The questions that are going to be either shared in the chat or sent by email during this time, please do limit it to the 24-25 funding round and the application process itself. We're working on outside inquiries. What I mean outside of this for 22-23 late apps, for 22-23 other costs, and 23-24 general questions. You should be expecting a response by the end of this week. We've done some reshuffling when it comes to organizations, so we'll want to make sure that these questions that we're receiving today are limited just to this, and we'll go ahead and make sure other inquiries that have been kind of not been on the list due to the overwhelming amount of applicants we have, that they'll be addressed by the end of this week. Most questions will be responded to through email after the presentation, especially specific questions. More generalized questions we'll be going ahead and answering at the end. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat, and please do share your email. Though we do have your email on registration, that's not a requirement. We can always go to that. And you'll receive a response by the end of the day on the personalized question or specific question you may have. And again, please do put that in the chat. If we don't address it during the meeting, you'll be receiving email after the meeting, as it's more of a question that's specific and just to limit the amount of time people are committing to this and kind of streamline the responses. But generalized questions are something that we should be sharing with the whole group will be answered at the last slide. So just want to give everyone a heads up there. And last but not least, of course, what I just mentioned, the application portal will be open once the presentation is ended. It is on the SB740 website under CSFA application portal. The link will be provided in the chat as well at the end, and as well as a general email sent out to everybody. So going to just go over the table of contents of what we'll be discussing today for the 24-25 application. We're going to go program overview. We're going to go and discuss eligibility and best practices, including some updates that we're going through that might affect information provided, but nothing about the application submission itself. The overall application, just generalized information about that. Facility agreements and how they kind of function in the program. Independent appraisals, just discussing that for a lot of newer applicants or folks with new facility agreements. The reimbursable lease costs to explain how the program caps work internally when it comes to lease costs, whether it be COLA or appraisal. Spend some time with data statistics that we've had over the last 5 funding rounds. Upcoming events, some reference materials and some details about that. And last but not least, contact information, and then again, any generalized questions we receive that we can provide a response to everybody in one foul swoop. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Elizabeth Mendez, our program lead, to talk about the overview of the program.
Thank you, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Mendez. I am one of the program leads for the SB740 program. I've been with the SB740 program for the past 2.5 years. And I will be going over the program overview. So for the program funding for the new 24-25 funding round, the governor's proposed budget allocation was 170,610,000. As you can see, there has been a decrease in the funding budget, as we will not be having, or we haven't heard yet of any allocation for other cost that we've received in the last 2 years. So for other costs for this new current funding round, if there are, it all depends on the subscription level, and if there anything that's remaining left over from the least cost will be used for other cost if is permitted. So now, to assist charter schools, we do require at least a 55% student meeting the FRPM criteria, or or located in an attendance area of an elementary school with at least 55% of FRPM, and it has to be in the preference in admission. And now for the funding round, to go over how it is calculated, we do take the lesser of the two following calculations. So the first is the 1,432. We would multiply that by the average daily attendance, ADA, and we do receive our ADA information from CDE. Now, as many of you have received the initial award notices for in the past, we do use the P2 ADA to calculate the award, but we do update to the current P2 data from CDE during true up. So you will see that there is a change from the initial award to the true up final award, just to make that a little more clear. And then for the 75% of costs associated with the rent lease, so we would just take the eligible cost and multiply it by 75% of those costs. Whichever is the lesser of the two would be the program award amount. And now moving over, as for an example, XYZ charter. So for the 22, 23, 24 funding round, they received an ADA of 50.54. Now 55.4, we would multiply that by the 1,432, and we would receive the award amount would be 72,373.28. Now, for the reimbursable rent, that if the lease was 5,000 per month, we would multiply that by the 12 months. So we allow for the eligible months for the funding round would be July 1st of 2023 for that year to June 30th of 2024 for this example. And then the total amount would be 60,000, but then we would multiply it by 75% to then get the 45,000 for eligible cost. So between these two, we would use the 45,000 as it's the lesser of the two calculations. And now for the eligibility and best practices, I will be going over eligible cost, good standing, legal status questionnaire, and then handing it off to Ryan for conflict of interest. So first off, eligible cost, our facilities cost associated with sites not owned by either district or county offices. So so Prop 39 facilities are not eligible for our lease cost reimbursable. Now, the costs associated with rent, lease, and remodeling. So these are all eligible for other costs, dependent on whether we have any funding left over. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that it's only classroom-based instruction that is eligible to receive reimbursement for lease rent costs. Now, good standing forms, these are completed by the authorizers for each funding round. So a charter must be compliant with the authorizer and no pending corrective actions or notices of intent to revoke. You do have time to, if you're not found in good standing, to cure your status with the authorizer until that funding round is over. But we cannot actually, you would have to go straight to the authorizer. We receive our information from the authorizer. So if you have any questions with good standing, please also work with your charter authorizer to cure the status. And then no response from authorizers are presumed as an acknowledgement of good standing. So we do send out these good standing forms at the beginning of around October, and then are notified by authorizers. Now for the LSQ's legal status questionnaires, we do review if there are any disclosures from past or current legal, civil, criminal investigations. Just be transparent. We will follow up with you if we have any questions during our review. And then for our conflict of interest, I will be handing that off up to Ryan.
We just want to give a heads up when it comes to conflicts of interest. We are, as many of you know, we were subject to a joint legislative audit committee audit that was for both our conduit program and our SB740 program. Though a very, good audit that shows that the administration of the program is functioning well and that it protects schools from closing and helps the most at-need students, there were still some suggestions related to conflict of interest vetting to be updated. And as we're working with our legal counsel, the Office of Administrative Law, and the California State Auditor as well, there is likely going to be a alteration to conflict of interest after the beginning of this round. That being said, though, please do comply with everything that we have in the application, including disclosure of what we have defined as a related party in our definitions. That will definitely make sure that we can not only guarantee that there's no issues if there's a stall in that type of thing, as there's 3 different agencies working, or I guess 4 technically agencies working on getting this implemented, and it doesn't limit any type of disbursement. As you guys, many of you know, the disbursements have been held to a different, has been pushed back slightly because of the fact that there's been a lot of back and forth about this. So we're at the end of it. Just please do be aware that there might be an additional reach out for information. But as of right now, when you apply, please do follow all the guidelines as listed to ensure that there's no issues barring any change coming up. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Daniel to talk about our tool form and fiscal information for disbursement receivable.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Madrid, and I'll be going over the STD 204 form that gets filled out when you apply. The STD 204 form is a form from The Department of Finance that we have to submit into a database called Fiscal. All awardees must submit a payee data record when applying. State Controller's Office uses this form to process awards. And the link there is where you can download it. We could also drop that in the chat for you at the end. A brief overview of the form. You put your name. If you're a CMO, you put your name there. And then if you have a DBA, you would put the school's name underneath there. That is very important because when we upload this into the system, you will have a parent and a child. So you would have, say here, if you're ABC Charter Incorporated, your child would be XYZ Charter Academy. That is very important because we can only update individuals based upon the 204. So even if you have a parent and you have 10 schools, we're only able to update one at a time, one per form. So this form is very important. In spelling and everything is also incredibly important. Just some brief kickback. If you're known as the charter school and you just put down charter school, it does run the risk of getting denied because it doesn't match exactly on the name. So everything being identical and matching is incredibly important. Anything, spelling errors or anything like that, it just causes delays and then we have to reach out to you for corrected forms. And when you are getting your disbursements, it just slows it down. And, we want you to get your awards on a timely manner. And the fewer hiccups we have, the better for everyone. As it says here, the names must appear exactly on the IRS's FEIN number. So whatever is on the IRS website, it has to match the FEIN number. Again, is you have the example business name here, ABC Charter. You do business as XYZ Charter Academy. That is very important to put there as well. Again, any spelling errors or anything like that, it can lead to delay in payments in this thing. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us and we can help you out with these forms. But that's pretty much it for the STD 204 form. I will pass this off to Kim.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Nguyen, and I have been with the team for about 3 months now. I am very, very excited to be a part of this program with the team that I'm with. But just please be patient with me as I work my hardest to navigate through the world of SB 740. So with that being said, let's go over the application overview. So the online application will be available on the CSFA website after the webinar, which is today, Monday, April 15th. I will drop that link into the chat box at the end of the presentation. And application deadline will be Wednesday, June 5th, 2024 at 5 p.m. And late applications may not be funded or accepted. So only online applications will be accepted. If you have technical questions or need support submitting your application, please contact the authority early. That's our SB 740 email. And applications should be submitted under the school's name. Documents must be a PDF with a maximum file size of 5,000 kilobyte or 5 megabyte. Documents to submit with your application: a current valid charter agreement / petition, approve authorizing board resolution regarding petition approval / adoption, list of your board members, your completed legal status questionnaire, your LSQ, and certification signature pages. DocuSign is acceptable. And other documents could include board meeting minutes, resolutions, and facility appraisal. And all facility and lease agreements must be current and executed by all parties. Each lease agreement should be scanned and uploaded separately. Save by using the following naming convention: applicant, dash facility street address dash term. So for example, your charter name, XYZ Charter dash, just a brief address, 123 Main Street. You don't need to put the zip, but this is just so we can find your lease easily. And also at the end, it will be, in this example, 2021 to 2025, that's the commencement year to the expiration year. An important note, each facility or rental agreement per facility site should be uploaded separately. Combine any responding amendment and original lease as a single document with the most recent amendment first. I apologize if I went a little fast. I think the slides were a little off on my end. Now I will throw it back to Elizabeth to continue with the presentation.
Okay, great job. Great job, Kim. Thank you. So now for facility agreements. So type of facility and lease agreements. So for multi-year facility and lease agreements, you do not need to resubmit if we already have it on file. I know most schools are reapplicants. But please, if you do have any new facility agreements or extended or amended facility agreements, please submit the most current and valid, and make sure to that they are also signed off by both the tenant and lessor. So just a brief overview of the new facility agreements. So a rental or lease agreement for a facility not previously occupied by a charter, a rental or lease agreement that includes additional square footage, a new agreement for existing facilities, or square footage when existing lease is up for renewal or has expired. Any options to renew contained in the existing rent or lease agreements on file. We will need, please submit any rent increase letters from your landlord. You can email us those updated increases to our SB740 inbox. Please also let us know if any leases will not be continued, or just that way that we have the most current information on the application. And then next slide, please. So here's an example of XYZ Charter who had an increase of 50 square feet on the new agreement. So for the XYZ Charter, they signed a new lease with a new landlord for the same name, and site and square footage. We would need also a new agreement. For example number 3, XYZ Charter exercises a renewal option in the last year's lease. This would be a multi-year agreement. Example 4, XYZ Charter opens a new site. We would definitely need a new agreement. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email us. We will most likely also be reaching out to you during our review. So if we have any questions, I know sometimes it can be special cases where, so we are just trying to make sure that we have all the correct information. So thank you so much for following up with our emails during that time. And we look forward to your application. With that, I will hand it off to Colin, one of our new analysts.
Actually, sorry, I'm stepping in here. Sorry about that.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Ryan back. Not
Okay,
assuming everyone recognizes my voice
never
either.
bad to have Ryan back.
Just want to talk about independent appraisals and then some reimbursement examples before we give it off to Colin. So independent appraisals are required for new facility agreements, as Elizabeth just explained. The appraisal itself is valid for 3 years. I know we've seen Ms. Calloway ask the question about that, so I wanted to address that right now and here. If the appraisal stays good for 3 funding rounds, including the first round, so let's say you turn in an appraisal for this year, that means it would be good for 24, 25, 25, 26, and 26 and 27. If you get a new agreement within those years, then you can use the same appraisal. But if it falls past those years, we would need a new appraisal on file in order. You can also submit an appraisal anytime. There is not a requirement that it's one appraisal only. If you believe that, obviously no one has too much insight into property values, as well as we'll talk in a little bit of COLA adjustments for the program when it comes to a multi-year lease, that if an appraisal can provide a little bit more of an accurate portrayal of the value of the property for the school, especially when considering this is based on fair market value for what the school is paying. You can submit that anytime during the funding round up until we complete the actual award itself. So please do keep that in mind. But again, 3 funding rounds is the maximum valid time for appraisals on file. The contents of the appraisal, as you can see here, we see this was, this has been, I think, the 5th or 6th year that we've had appraisals in the program. Appraisers have kind of caught up with the notion of this. Educational facilities do seem like a little bit of used to be at least, a niche kind of appraisal market, though many more appraisers seem to have adjusted. We cannot and would not advise a specific appraiser. Just any appraiser that has been certified by the California Department of Real Estate Appraisers, which is available online and available link on our website as well in our frequently asked questions. As long as they are certified through that and aren't considered at the time a related party, somebody who has a personal business interest with the school, then they should be eligible, barring the review that we get. Please do make sure, if possible, that there is a breakdown of square footage as well. A lot of schools, if we have an issue with square footage, if people increase square footage and we don't have a breakdown of square footage, then it might require new appraisal. So please do include that in there as well. But most of the appraisals seem to follow a specific format that is a standardized form. So just please do make sure you use a certified general appraiser, and there shouldn't be any issues barring the specifics that we might run into. Okay, and just to talk about reimbursable lease costs. So this is a little bit of the complex side of the program, though there seems to be more than one. This one seems to hang up people the most. We use these years specifically just to kind of show the COLA, how it works. Right now, the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, which is a cap for multi-year leases, is brought up by Elizabeth. That multi-year lease agreements are right now capped at 0.76%. Now that is not the final COLA released by the governor, but right now the COLA has definitely the days of the 2 to 3% seem to not be coming right now. So we will have an update for everybody, but please do note that the COLA percentage, if you pay attention to it, is the K through 12 COLA rate that is also available with CDE and will be available with the budget. Does not seem to be tremendously high. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up. But just let's go ahead and dive in this example right here. So we're starting in 2017-18 with a brand new XYZ charter, our favorite fake charter school. I hope no one takes that name, as we'll need to change a few forms. They come in with actual rent of $100,000. Their appraisal comes in at a little bit higher. It's $125,000. That acts as the cap, meaning that the actual rent just cannot exceed that. But of course, the actual rent then becomes the reimbursable rent. So as you can see the end over there, that it's $100,000, and then 75% of that would be used in the lesser than formula with ADA. But this is, again, just focusing on the reimbursable lease costs. There is no former year reimbursable lease cost, as this is the first year the school is applied. But as stated below, this is a 3-year lease, and they're going to go ahead and have it from 2017 to the end of the school year in 2020. So the next year, their rent goes up by $5,000 annually to $105,000. Since it is a lease, a multi-year agreement, it is now capped by COLA, which for that year was 2.71%. So we take 2.71% 0.71% of the former year's reimbursable rent, and that cap is $102,710, which is lesser than the actual rent, but it is the cap in effect. So the reimbursable rent for that year is $102,710. The next year, the rent goes up $5,000, as many do. Oh, are we having? Sorry, just making sure. If people are using the little buttons at the bottom, it might lock you, it might put you on there. Please do let us if anyone's having issues with that catch up. It's a little bit more adjustable or personalized than normal. There should be an option to go live, but we're on slide 15. I just saw in the chat there. So slide 15, reimbursable rent costs. So back to 1920, now $5,000 more, it's 110. It is still in a multi-year lease, so it's going to take the COLA cap 3.26 and base that on the prior year's reimbursable rent. Now, it is the COLA cap rent. It is not the actual rent on file. It is the actual cap and the reimbursed rent. So that 3.62 is multiplied by the 102, not the 110 or 105. And that's where it gets us the 106.58 and change. So that would be the eligible lease cost for the 1920 year. But as stated below, they renew their lease agreement outside of an amendment. If the amendment's inside and they approved it before the end of the 1920 year, this would not be considered a new lease agreement. But since XYZ Charter did not do that, they got technically a new lease agreement for 2020 to 2022. The additional square footage does trigger it, but regardless, it is a new lease agreement because it wasn't a renewal based on a done in the prior year. So that one, now the rent is $130,000. It is an appraisal cap as it is a new facility agreement, and the appraisal came in a little under this time at $129,000. Now you can see there's COLA still involved, as we have COLA every year. The first year there was none, right? So that being said, we're going to take the appraisal cap, though we had a reimbursable rent. It's the same address, all that stuff. Because it is triggered as a new facility agreement, with it being a new agreement and the increased square footage, the cap is now the appraisal. So the reimbursable rent is $129,000 times 75%. But going back, now we're back at it being a multi-year lease as it's going until 2022, and COLA comes back into effect. So for the rent being $135,000, we're going to base the 2.3% COLA on the prior year's reimbursable rent of $129,000, and that gives us almost $132,000 as the reimbursable rent. We try to put this in award notices slightly to show what cap is dictating what award notices is, but we don't put the extended version like this, of course. So people have any questions or follow up on that, we'll go ahead and address that separately. But this is just a generalized example of when the appraisal cap comes in and then when the COLA cap comes in. If these were single year leases, all appraisals. If this was a 5-year lease term, 6-year lease term, it would only require an appraisal for the first actual submission round. I do see some questions here. We'll go ahead and address them at the end just so we can make sure that we don't get sidetracked slightly with that. But I do see the questions coming up related to appraisals and costs. We'll make sure that we'll go ahead and address those questions once we get to the end of the presentation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton off to Colin Smith to discuss some of our data and statistics.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Colin Smith. I'm an analyst here with the SB740 program. Very happy to be here. So we're going to go over just some of the data statistics here. As you can see, we have allocation on the top row, that $136 million from the state budget. Pretty much goes unchanged up until we see a huge jump in growth here at 22-23 fiscal year. And that's from that $30 million allocation for other costs that Elizabeth had mentioned back in slide 5, I believe. And with that, for that 2 years of 22-23 and 23-24. One thing to note here is that the figures and estimates shown for 22-23 and 23-24 is that they are subject to change. basically due to the fact that they have not been completed yet. So you'll notice that there is an asterisk there indicating that the figures will likely change, more likely than not. And below you see we have a bar graph, just to kind of outlining some of the figures that we have here showing our growth. For upcoming events, we have, as of today, April 15th, beginning of the funding round application period. We have June 5th. You'll notice the close of the funding round, 2024-25 application period. And then for the other cost submission in early July, participants will only receive an email if they meet eligibility. And just want to make sure we're all on the same slide. We're on slide 17 right now. Going to be going to slide 18. So we have appendix reference materials. Our frequently asked questions are currently being updated. You can still access the current version of the FAQs that are still on our website, and mostly they are mostly up to date. We'll just be having a few adjustments that will take effect on the 22nd. We also have links here, which will all be included at the end of this presentation in the chat. For our current regulations, we have the 204 form that Daniel was speaking about, the EIN form or information from the IRS. And then at the bottom here, we have our listserv, our mailing list that provides relevant information as it relates to the program. So we would encourage you all to join our listserv. And with that, for closing out our final slide, I'm going to toss it back to Ryan.
Thank you, Colin. So this has our general information here. Now that we'll go ahead and make sure this presentation is available. The websites are linkable. The SB740 email in the middle there is as written, as well as you see all the wonderful contacts here. And our executive director, Katrina Johankin, is also listed there as well. And with that, would like to thank everybody for attending this webinar. We're going to go ahead and provide the link in the chat right now. If you're on the website, you should be able to access the SB740 portal and be able to submit your application. Please do choose the correct year. Now we have as we're trying to get through late applications and the technical side of that, of allowing that, there is 2 different portals. Please do pick the 24-25. Again, please do start early, start as soon as you can. Open applications are not considered unsubmitted, if you will, but we cannot submit applications open applications after the closing. So please do at least begin the application period, our application today. I will go over and answer some of the questions provided. If you don't receive an answer to the question that you provided, you will be getting an email follow-up. So please do not be concerned about that. We just want to make sure that we can allow people to get over to the application, get it submitted, and we can go ahead and have a full team to address any issues that might come up with the technical side of that. So I wanted to touch on one last thing here. As Eric mentioned in the chat, if you guys see at 10:15, there is no other costs for this year allocated. As Elizabeth mentioned, it is totally based off our subscription rate. And right now we are projecting an oversubscription. Now it is totally hypothetical. It is totally estimated. We don't know who applies for this round as the application just opened right now. But do reach out to your legislator if you feel that that needs to be addressed. He provided a link there. We do think that the $30 million was more appropriate with the alignment of the actual funding of the program as a whole. But then again, it also guaranteed some ability for other costs, which we cannot say right now for this for FY 24-25. So again, this is something outside of our what's it called? Outside of our abilities to change. It has to be coming from above us, the legislator and the governor's budget. So please do reach out to the appropriate people if you feel that needs to be heard further, especially for your school. Okay. So again, the application is open, not to encourage people to leave, but if you don't see anything in the chat or waiting for something in the chat, please do feel free to go ahead over and start the application process. For John's question about FY24 information, it's normally in May. We don't have an exact deadline with CDE when they provide that information to us. Yes, the most current information is FY23 when it comes to FRPM. By the time we do initial reviews, which start in the late summer, we will have the information. Just so everyone is clear about that, your FRPM percentage, except for new schools, is based on the prior year. So everyone's FRPM for the funding round we're applying for right now at 24-25 is based on your FRPM for 23-24. New schools are the only exception, as they don't have that. But if you are a returning applicant, it is going to be based on the prior years, including a preference in admission use. So even the local elementary school, it'll be based on the prior year's FRPM. To answer Peter's question about the name does not need to match on your 204 form. The more important side of it is that the form that if you applied with a different name in this program, please, and then your 204, please update us. We do use CDE directory, but we use CDS code to gather information. Change the CDS code, we would be informed about more, and you all would inform us more. But any type of operating name change, if CDE doesn't reflect that, that's not going to withhold anything for us funding wise. If it's not updated with us and the 204 form, it will likely have an effect on the timeline for disbursements. I think I answered your question, Christina, but want to just touch on it one more time. 3-year maximum funding round for appraisals being valid, and they can be used over those 3 years as, each year if needed to be. But after that 3rd year, there does need to be a new appraisal if it is needed. And new schools, if your charter petition is pending, you can still apply. We do have a new school period that opens up in October, or I actually think September. And that is for new schools specifically that obviously don't have the ability to that may have opened a little bit later. But yes, you can go ahead and apply. There's an option to apply without a CDS code, which would be good, which would be the pathway for newer schools. Okay. As I combine these with both handwritten and reading through the chat, please do give me a little bit of time here. Okay, the question from Samira about the appraisal. If your lease agreement is for 40 years, let's say, and there's no change, there is no requirement for appraisal until you trigger a new facility agreement. Now, you can submit an appraisal if COLA is not keeping up with the value of the property, or the fair market value of the property, I should say, then you can go and resubmit it. But there's no requirement as long as that lease is active and current. So the number of years, there's no limitation on the number of years your lease can be with a lessor. Just needs to be something that we are aware of and that is on file with us. Appraisals are not required for portables as they are invoiced items. So if you have portables, do not worry about an appraisal. You can go ahead and submit that, and we'll go ahead and find the fair market value based on the company itself. Some of these are a little specific, so we'll make sure to reach out to people about that. Just to kind of touch on Marisol's question here about the appraisal, it's the easiest way to think about the caps is whatever the lowest amount is. So if the appraisal, and you're working on an appraisal cap, if it's lower, you're going to go ahead and get that number. If the actual rent is lower, you'll get that number. And the same with the COLA cap. The lowest number caps absolutely. So whichever of those amounts, actual or capped amount, is lower is what the reimbursable rent's going to be based off of. Appraisals should be submitted with your application, but please don't hesitate if you can't apply now, and you will not be able to get your award until we receive an appraisal. So it is something time sensitive, but is not actually required to submit an application. And I would honestly encourage schools to submit an application if they don't have an appraisal on file and are working to get it, just to ensure you do not miss the application deadline itself, because we can't work backwards from that. And also just to mention, John, yes, you can apply if FRPM data is not published. Now, you may not be eligible That might be the only hang up here, but it does not prohibit you from applying. So please do apply even if you aren't certain about your FRPM. Just make sure that you go ahead and the application deadline is almost separate from the information. Eligibility will be determined after the application. There's no prohibition on people that would be found not eligible after the fact from applying in the first place. So please do apply even though FRPM data is not available yet for 23-24. You see some questions about the current year for FY24. We're going to address those separately just to keep it focused on the topic at hand. Same thing with other costs for FY24. For these slides, yes, we're going to get these slides online by the end of the day. We'll also provide them. Additionally, the recording might take a little longer, but that will be available by next week. So we will have a recording for everyone to go ahead and review this and be able to go back on some of the things that we discussed during this period, especially. Yeah, some of these are a little bit more specific, so we'll go ahead and reach out to folks. Except the last one I just got, just in case. If you do not have if you don't have a finalized lease, that just needs to be discussed with us as well. So please do put that in your application if you're working on finalizing it. Again, we don't want people missing the application period because of paperwork not being finalized when we have to do an application review in general. So if you don't know your FRPM, if you don't have an appraisal, or you aren't finalized in the sense of your lease agreements, please do apply. Lease agreements can be submitted throughout the year. We might need to ask for proof of payment for some things that are submitted month to month, or things that are kind of put in the middle of the year to confirm occupancy, but there is no requirement that you have to have everything completed and ready to go with application. The application is about getting you all into the program, and that's the major barrier to enter. Okay, I know that we got some more questions here, but we're going to go ahead and go through them and get back. They're a little bit more personalized, and we want to make sure we give a little bit more attention to them. So again, do want to thank everybody. Please do head over to the portal. It should be listed right underneath the webinar registration under CSFA application portal. If there's any issues, concerns, please email the SB740 mailbox, and we'll be working with our IT department to make sure any hiccups or issues, bugs, whatever may be, get fleshed out and you all won't have to deal with them. So again, thank you to the SB740 team for doing such a great job. And thank you to our executive director there that also did hit that point home. So thank you, everybody. We really, really appreciate and look forward to being in contact with many of you all about the questions that are related to other aspects of this program, as well as the questions about this funding round specifically. Thank you again and have a great day.